Well, apparently, I was right. We did meet with the commissioner, and as the saying goes, the rest is history. There will be no billion-dollar tax bill which we can't pay. There will be no more discrimination. There will be no more 2,500 cases against parishioners across the U.S. The pipeline of IRS false reports won't keep flowing across the planet. There will be no more nothing, because on October the 1st, 1993, at 8:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the IRS issued letters recognizing Scientology and every one of its organizations as fully tax-exempt. The war is over!
Now, one of the biggest events in Church of Scientology history is 1993 tax exemption.
It sure is.
That is one of David Miscavige's accomplishments about which he boasts.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal for a lot of reasons. It's controversial why they got it. That's a different story. But when the church was awarded tax exemption by the IRS, only a handful of people knew.
There is nothing you could have done but support the IAS, and that you did in a big way. The biggest win an enemy of ours could ever have would be to stop our real mission, the salvage of man and rehabilitation of his true spiritual nature. We fight the reactive mind, and our business is making freed beings. We do that with training and processing. The few of us who did know all the details knew that we somehow, anyhow, had to keep that show on the road. And we did so. But continue to fight the war, we also did.
Because David Miscavige wanted to keep it secret until the big event, the war is over speech.
Well, it couldn't leak. Like, in other words, the public of Scientology, the Scientologists around the world, could not find out about this win on the grapevine, so to speak. It had to be from him.
So
you know, it had to be properly thing.
Yeah, this is the event at the sports arena.
In LA, that's right.
You knew about it ahead of time.
I did, because I was in the film unit within the Messenger organization at the time. It's called Film and Equipment Unit. And my job at that time was to run the teleprompter for COB.
So you're running David Miscavige's teleprompter.
Yes, but I only ran it for rehearsals. I never ran it at the actual live shows. I ran it at the rehearsals. So on his speech, the one where he's standing on stage and he gives, I rehearsed that with him in the conference room for at least 4 days before the event.
What is David Miscavige like to work with and for?
Nerve-wracking. I was freaked out of my mind. I mean, I was practically shaking the whole time. Not because I was in fear of him as such, but he speaks fast. And he is very bang, 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 bang. And, well, I guess I actually was in fear because I didn't want to mess up. Like, I took a lot of pride that I was called upon at this time to run the teleprompter. But, okay, so there I am, and I'm running the teleprompter. But he's going along, saying it, reading it, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. This is an hour speech. It's not short, so it's long. And suddenly he'll go, okay, change that to a comma, move that word over there. English is not my first language, so I don't think that quickly. And I would be stumbling, and I would take little notes on the side, but I'm running. The prompter handle is on the right hand. I write with my right hand, so I was a bit of a mess. And my knuckles were like white because I was so nervous on messing up. And I think the blood actually stopped in my arms because I was like, whoa.
Oh, the tension, yes.
So I ended up having Laurice Stukenbrock sort of back and forth, which is his communicator. No, Laurice Stukenbrock was there. I don't think, whatever. She was there. I don't think she was the communicator at that time. And then Anne Rathbun was there. And so she caught on what I was having a problem with. She's herself French, and we know each other from earlier time. And she could sort of see what I was having trouble with. So she started taking notes, and she would whisper, that's a comma right there. That's this over there. And I like, calm down. Because, anyway, it was nerve-wracking. It was some of the most intense 4 days. The whole event actually was one of the most intense 2 weeks I've ever been through in my life.
You literally no sleep.
Well, that was the other thing, because it was, okay, so then, I forgot about the no sleep, but yes, exactly. So what happened is that you would rehearse with COB, and he would start at 1 o'clock, let's say, and he would go straight till 10 o'clock at night. And it would be over, and he would be off on his other things, and everybody would leave, and I would be scrambling around, getting everything ready for the next morning, because I knew that starting at 9 o'clock the next morning, I could get a call any second to restart the rehearsals. There was so much attention on this, obviously.
Now, it is traditional at the annual IAS event to discuss such matters. It is the one event each year where we gather and discuss our wins on the external front. We usually cover many different activities that have occurred throughout the year. Tonight will be different. This event was only scheduled last week for a very specific reason. So tonight's event is very timely. What we're going to talk about is the war to end all wars. Now, whether you have been in Scientology a month, a year, a decade, or more, you have seen some part of our battles. You've seen the suppression we have to endure. But when you are in Scientology, you are in all the way. There's no half in and half out. The bullets aren't particular as to who they hit. Therefore, you deserve to know the full magnitude of the suppression we have faced.
Now the big event comes. The big war is over speech comes.
Yes.
Apparently, the event, from David Miscavige's point of view, was somewhat of a fiasco.
It was. It was a really not good thing.
What went wrong at the event?
Well, several things went wrong at the event. The most dramatic thing is that he read the entire speech on one teleprompter. The guy who was in charge, like, you had the first opening of the event, and you had the flag bearers and all that kind of stuff, and then 2 boys ran out in black clothes and put the teleprompters in their holes so that they had to come in after the place, and then the podium came out, right? And the teleprompter was askew. So as he's standing there reading the entire speech to that 10,000 people in that audience, he's reading only off one teleprompter.
It's got to be hard for him to do.
Oh, I'm sure, that's nerve-wracking for him, and I know that he was fuming about that, and I think honestly anybody would. If I think of any CEO, so anybody would, but nevertheless, so he was pissed about that. I don't believe anybody ever gave him a glass of water, so he's standing up there, or the water ran out, or there was some problem connected to the water. The background was brown, so his face mushed. You know, like the background, he didn't pop off the background because it was a brown background.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting to me as a lighting guy myself. The lighting looked really muddy in those pictures.
It was, and that didn't go very well either.
Following the reorganization of the church, we set up meetings with the IRS. This was in 1984. Our desire was to show them how the church operated, ensure it was in order, and passed their test, and move forward into the future at peace. Now, believe it or not, the IRS has exact guidelines they have created that one must meet to be a real religion.
Now, you took the famous long shot, which we're displaying on camera right now.
Oh, okay.
You took the famous long shot.
I sure did. But that's a story in itself. That's whole related to all this.
No, because in the middle of the event, in the middle of the war is over speech, biggest deal in Church of Scientology history, you get arrested.
I do.
What happens?
So I had been working on the speech, the whole preparation, running up to the event. And I was also the person who was in charge of the different slides and photographs that would come up along his speech as he was talking, right? And there was a lot of documents, so it was very significant. I had to go through it like 20 times to make sure that the people working for us in the truck, in the broadcast truck, didn't have the wrong thing coming up at the wrong time, because that would be like another horrific thing. Anyway, so the event is now about to start. I run in and I put on my black clothes, because now I transform and I become a photographer. And I am out in the sports arena, and I have a wide lux camera, which is a very small camera, but it has a moving lens. And I am shooting with this camera, and it requires a tripod, because it has to be still for at least 20 seconds while it moves, right? Logical. Okay, well, because I missed all the rehearsals of everything else, because I was over there, I did not know that I couldn't have a tripod. The fire marshals are everywhere because there's a live fire on the stage. So I get pulled aside by a fire marshal, and he says, you know, you got to get rid of the tripod. I was like, I can't really do that. But I don't know what I answered. But I said something, and I kept shooting. So then I kept shooting again. I got pulled over again by a different fire marshal. And he said, you got to get rid of that tripod.
Now let me stop you. They have live fire on the stage?
Yeah.
Why do they need live fire on the stage?
They had the
torches.
The torches, yeah.
So they were actually using real fire.
Oh, it was hardcore, real fire.
And it's very dramatic.
So, and and this is where my idiocy of not really being an American comes in. You know, I don't think these things through. Plus, it doesn't even really matter what I thought through, because I was such a nervous, panicked wreck trying to rehearse the speech up until the last moment, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, so I keep shooting because I know how important this event is. If anybody knows how important this event is, I do. And I'm one of the photographers. I can't follow an order from a fire marshal to start shooting.
Well, no, because this is a historic event in the church.
That's right.
Better
so I completely non-complied to the fire marshal, which you don't do. You don't.
No.
You don't not do what the fire marshal or the police tell you, right? So I go to the other side thinking I'm going to outsmart them, not thinking the fact that the fire marshals are tracking the blonde-haired photographer on their radios. And I get over there, and this fire marshal just pulls me out, and he goes, a long story short, he basically talks to me for half an hour, and he demands that I have identification. And I was like, I'm a photographer. I have a roll of film in my pocket. I mean, my ID is over there. And anyway, this whole thing keeps going on, and he's talking to me, and he's really just pissed because I didn't stop shooting. I'm violating the law. I'm putting the whole event at risk by shooting with my tripod, and at the same time, I can't identify who I am.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
I'm not a U.S. citizen on top of that. I actually don't even know if he knew that, but...
So you're not a U.S. citizen, you have a green card,
Yeah.
religious worker visa, you're not obeying the authorities, there's live fire. I'm surprised, just to interject, that Miscavige didn't want lions and tigers on stage, but that's, you know...
Okay,
do they take you outside?
So then I'm in the back room, DM... David Miscavige is still talking on stage. This whole thing is going on. I'm out there for half an hour, 45 minutes. The fire marshal gets irritated with me and says, I'm going to turn you over to the police. You're going to be under arrest. And he starts taking me out the door. And for some reason, out of the blue, this lady shows up. She's with OSA, Office of Special Affairs. I've never seen her, really. I don't even know who she is. She seems somewhat familiar. And says, Officer, can we please deal with this with internal justice within the Church of Scientology?
So the fire marshal turned you back to church custody.
Basically. So I was in church custody, and she says, get back in there. So then I go back in there, and I go all the way down as I'm walking in, and it's like these steep stairs up in the sports arena, and I'm walking back down, and then as I literally come to the bottom, I see David Miscavige turn to the camera and go, done, sir, to the LOH photo. And I was like, oh my God. That didn't go on photo. Anyway, so I'm again still panicked. The point in the end of this whole story is that I only had 2 little rolls of film from the entire event. And I come and I turn them in to my boss, who is Jeff Baker. And he was like, is that all? Yes, I had a really bad day. I don't know what I said, but it was something like, I didn't have any time to explain the horror story that just had gone on. And I was basically in the hands of the police. So that's what occurred in that whole thing, and... Yeah.
Well, now, what's the fallout from all these mishaps? Did people go to RPF?
Yes,
or their
the guy in charge of the teleprompters was David Bogart, and yes, he did go to the RPF. There was somebody else who went to the RPF, and I can't remember who it was, and a very large committee of evidence, which is the internal justice. Was a on goldenrod paper, and it was very official and so forth, was drawn up, and it had like a list of names this long on it. Everybody you can imagine who had something to do with this, and then a whole board of senior executives were gathered to investigate this whole matter and really find who was at fault on what.
Now, one thing you mentioned before in our pre-interview, you said that the brown background drown out David Miscavige. And it does. You can't even see him in the photos. So this is when he orders everything thereafter a blue background.
That's right.
So this is why we always see him behind blue.
Yeah, exactly, because it pops off the back.
He wants to pop out.
Yeah.
Now, were there any other changes after the war is over? I mean,
there were lighting changes, but I don't remember where all the details were. The lighting for that event, for that show, was extremely expensive. Between the stage proper, the canopy, the International Scientology, that one running across, and then the for the good purpose of nothing else, right now I call it floodlights, you know, that ran over the whole thing. So there were other things I can't remember. I really got caught up in, after the whole thing, making photo albums of all the event and the awards and Monique and all those people on stage, and custom photo albums for all kinds of different things. And I don't even know what they were all for, but they were all for different things, and framed photographs of different...
So gifts and awards and memorabilia. Now, David Miscavige having gained tax exemption, I mean, that game is over with. So what does he do next? Or what does he do for a goal? What's his next plan or goal, or does he...
I think that's what became Ideal Orgs.